Namaste, and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Om Sarva Jiva Papanashakaranam Bhaveshwaram Swikritang Jagarbhavasa Deha Pashamidrisham Yapitam Swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Yapitam Swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Tannamami Deva Deva Ramakrishna Ishwaram. Om Shri Vivekanandari Satchishya Supujitaya Shri Sharada Devya Virata Sevitaya Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsaya Avatara Varishtaya Chate Namaha. Om Tava Katamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravana Mangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Jana. So let me say before we begin that we're having some technical issues. I've had some good help trying to sort it through. But there's still a little background sound that we can't get rid of. And so I'm sorry for that, but that's a problem that we haven't been able to isolate. And we are getting a new system, but until that is put in, we may have to put up with a little bit of background sound. We'll try to minimize it. We'll try to figure out how best to keep the quality high. But right now, all we can do is apologize for that. So, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we are on in the section on April 8th, 1883, and it is in the New York edition and other editions following the New York pagination, page 209, about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom, or 1/4 of the way from the bottom. So Sri Ramakrishna began to talk with Adhar on the veranda north of his room. So the veranda north of Sri Ramakrishna's room is the long veranda which faces out on the outside of the Kali temple compound and faces towards the Nahabat a little to the left and the Kunti a little bit to the right. So there Sri Ramakrishna was speaking to Adhar. Master, you are a deputy magistrate. Remember that you have obtained your position through the grace of God. Do not forget him, but remember that all men must one day walk down the same path. We stay in the world only a couple of days. And there's a note that Adhar passed away 18 months after Sri Ramakrishna said this. And so Sri Ramakrishna was alluding to that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that when he looked at a person, it was like looking at a glass case. You can see all of the contents. So he could look at a person, see the person's temperament, including their spiritual orientation. He could see their past. He could see their future. And so he obviously knew that Adhar was going to pass away a short time later, 1.5 years later, 18 months later. And so he says this, first of all, telling him, you are a deputy magistrate. That in those days, even now, but in those days, that was a high position. And with position comes pride of position. And that is one of the obstacles in spiritual life. So Sri Ramakrishna is reminding him, you are a deputy magistrate, so you have to be careful, is the intent of saying that. You are a deputy magistrate, so there's the tendency to be egotistical, to be proud that I have achieved this through my good qualities. Look at what a great person I am. So he says, remember that you have attained your position through the grace of God. Remember that you attained it through the grace of God. That we should all remember for whatever position we have in life, if it is any position at all, if we have any success in any field in life. Why? Because people like to think, whether it's India or whether it's America, the way they think may be a little different, the context of their thinking may be a little different, but wherever, India, America, or any country in between the two, on the opposite sides of the globe, I like to think that I deserve the post I got because I'm such a good person. I'm so qualified, and I worked hard to get it. And the fact is that, yes, it's good to work hard. It's good to earn what you have. But could anyone do that without so many factors contributing to their success? I've known people who worked very hard all their life, who had a desire for wealth. There was one of our devotees in Southern California, just as an example. I've known many people with a similar story. But this particular story, a devotee in Southern California who sincerely wanted to be able to give to Swami Prabhavananda, founder of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, and after he passed away, to give to the society $1 million. That was his desire. He never got anywhere close to having that much money, but he worked hard to try to make money, because he really wanted to have that ability to give something significant to his guru and subsequently to his guru's work. But he never accumulated significant money at all. After years of hard work, he always, whenever he came up with a good idea, it was always a day too late. Or a year too late, or whatever, that he came up with it and somebody had already beat him to the punch. And so there's so many factors in life that we can't account for. There are other people who become wealthy. Their father gives them millions of dollars, and even they become proud that I earned this money. No, they didn't earn it at all. Their father gave it to them. People, I know people also who have vast wealth and think that they deserve their wealth. That the riffraff, the common people, they only want handouts. And I'm not just speaking about famous politicians. I know people that are not known as politicians also, who are in the same boat. They themselves received vast wealth from their family, put them in a good position. They were able to go to good schools and everything. And then they think that the ordinary people, if they made good choices like me, they could have been rich too. So they don't deserve anything. They're lazy. They're good for nothing. I've worked hard. So that's a very intoxicating factor in life, having position. So everyone should remember that whatever position I have in life, it's through the grace of God. It's through the grace of God that I've got what I have. Because without that, again, like this other person I mentioned and many others I know, who worked very hard, who wanted wealth, but even wanted wealth to use it for a good purpose. But they couldn't get it. And other people who did, I know another man, he's passed away now. He was a devotee also. He had a phenomenal ability with money. He joined a company, a computer or software company near its beginning decades ago. And the company became very successful, not through his work. So he was a salesperson for this company. He would come in a few times a week into the office, make a few phone calls, and make lots of sales, lots of money. There were other people I knew, also knew them personally, who would go and spend hours every day in the office. They would hit the sidewalk, going around trying to sell the software. They couldn't make anything. And this man, just going into the office a few times a week for just a little bit of time, make a few calls, and he'd make all of these sales. You can't explain that just on the basis of the amount of work and the amount of effort that one put into the job. Sometimes things just happen like that. Later, he had the same man had another company of his own, and got a partner, and the partner would spend 12 hours, 16 hours a day working. He was the creative one, and this man was just taking care of the business end. He didn't even know how to do the things that the other man was doing to actually produce the product. But he would come in for a few hours now and then, to do a little bit, make some calls. He made vast wealth, whereas the other man was spending 12 hours, 16 hours a day, every day, working hard to produce the actual content. And so, again, we shouldn't think that I have everything that I have because of my hard work and other people don't deserve it. If they don't have it, it's because they didn't work hard like me. No, it's the factors of karma and the play of the divine. That's all that we can say. Just one more note on that, let me add, and then I'll get back to the gospel. One of our Swamis, American Swamis, used to say that the proof of the law of karma, and I'm going to give a reference that most of you won't even know, Lawrence Welk. So let me first say that Lawrence Welk was a famous TV personality many, many decades ago. He had no good looks. He was not at all good looking. He wasn't talented. He had no charisma, and yet he was phenomenally successful. And so this Swami would say, Lawrence Welk is proof of the law of karma. He had no talent. He had no looks. He had no charisma. And yet he was successful and made vast wealth. In fact, north of San Diego, there's a whole village named after him, Lawrence Welk Village. So you are a deputy magistrate to Adhar. Remember that you have obtained your position through the grace of God. Do not forget him, but remember that all men must one day walk down the same path. That is the path of death. All of us have to face death. So Adhar was so fortunate. Not only did he have a good position in life as a deputy magistrate, but he had Sri Ramakrishna as his guide. And as we saw in a previous reading in the same chapter, Adhar was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna loved Adhar very much. So think of the grace that Adhar had. And perhaps we don't know, but he must have done great things in past lives to have merited this type of grace in this life he lived with Sri Ramakrishna. To have one like Sri Ramakrishna give him that advice, to see that he was going to die, and then to give him advice like this. He doesn't tell him you're going to die, but he knew it and gave him advice to prepare him for it. We stay in the world only a couple of days, and how true that is. When we're young, time seems to be endless. We say time hangs heavy on us when we're young because everything seems to go so slowly. When you're a kid, a day seems so long. And then a month is incredibly long, and a year is unimaginably long. The older you get, the shorter time becomes. And so when you get to be an old man or old woman, you realize that, my God, my life has just passed like that. Just passed like that. You're young and you can't believe it. You know intellectually, conceptually that, yes, everybody dies, so I'll die someday. But that is so far away from your mind that it's completely inactive. As really unimaginable that it's actually going to happen. Even old age is unimaginable when you're young. I forget who said it. Some famous American said that the greatest surprise to a man is one day when he wakes up and finds himself to be old. That also we all know conceptually, and yet someday it sneaks up on us. We suddenly look in the mirror and say, my goodness, who's that old man looking back at me? And so Life is but a day. We stay in the world only a couple of days. That's very, very true. This world is our field of activity. We are born here to perform certain duties. People have their homes in the country, but come to Calcutta to work. So yes, this is our karma kshetra. So the first verse in the Gita, the blind king Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya, dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata Sanjaya. Oh Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of King Pandu do when they came onto the battlefield with the desire to fight with each other? But he says, dharma kshetre kurukshetre. Kurukshetra is the field of the Kurus, the name of the field where the armies were gathered for battle. A vast plain where these two huge armies had gathered for battle. But he calls it Kurukshetra, its proper name, and says Dharma Kshetra. Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. The Kurukshetra, which is the Dharma Kshetra. Kshetra meaning field, and Dharma, the field of Dharma. And as I explained a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday, Dharma can't be reduced just to the concept of righteousness. It's a very huge concept, but it includes righteousness. And so the field of right activity, that also is a reduction, but we can reduce it to that to have some way of describing it. So Kurukshetra, which is the field of righteous action, of right action. And so here Sri Ramakrishna says this world is our karma kshetra. So Kurukshetra is the dharma kshetra, which is the karma kshetra, the field of activity. So our Kurukshetra, our battlefield, is this our karma kshetra, the field of action. So the world is our field of action, but this isn't our home. A beautiful thing is said in the biography of Nag Mahashaya, the great householder disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, that from the time he was a little boy, he felt that this wasn't his home, that this world was not his home. He would look at the heavens and wonder if his home was up there somewhere. But he felt that this isn't home. Where have I come to? Where have I come? And so Sri Ramakrishna is telling him that this world is our field of activity. This is where we perform our karma, where we work out our karma. And if we're not wise, where we make more karma, thus binding ourselves. But if we have some wisdom, we have a little bit of awakening to spiritual life, we begin trying to figure out how to unwind my karma, how to work out my karma. Not that we can ever work out all of it, but let me at least undo enough of it so that I can see myself forward. Right now, we're tied up like caterpillars in a cocoon. We can't get out. So at least let me undo the complications of my karma. Let me work through them, and let me not make more karma by not reacting to the circumstances my past karma brings to me. My past karma brings all of these circumstances to me that I have in life. So let me not react to them negatively and thus make it more complicated. So this world is our field of activity. We are born here to perform certain duties. Everyone comes into life with a swadharma, their own dharma, their own orientation to life, their own problems that they have to work out. Everyone comes into life with a constellation of inner qualities and inner problems that need to be worked out. People have their homes in the country but come to Calcutta to work. So our home is with God. That's where our real home is, with God. But we come here to the karma kshetra, the field of karma, in order to work. So never forget that this is not our home. If we forget, life will remind us when life takes itself away from us and we die. So it's better that we recognize it ourselves, so that when death comes, we're ready for it. We realize now it's time to go back to my home. He continues, it is necessary to do a certain amount of work. This is a kind of discipline, but one must finish it speedily. While melting gold, the goldsmith uses everything, the bellows, the fan, and the pipe. so that he may have the hot fire he needs to melt the metal. After the melting is over, he relaxes and asks his attendant to prepare a smoke for him. All this time his face has been hot and perspiring, but now he can smoke. So this is a wonderful paragraph also, that it is necessary to do a certain amount of work. All of us have to do something, as Sri Krishna says in chapter 3 of the Gita. Nahi kashti kshanamapi jatutishtatya karmakrit. No one, even for a moment, can remain without working. Sharira yatra pichate na prasidhyeda karmana. You can't even maintain the body, Sri Krishna says in a couple of verses later, 3 verses later, without doing work. And so we have to do a certain amount of work, as Sri Ramakrishna says. This is a kind of discipline. Yes, let us take the work that we have to do as a kind of discipline. Swami Vivekananda said that he wanted his disciples to emphasize work rather than traditional tapasya. Traditional tapasya meaning fasting and long vigils and bathing in ice-cold streams and doing things like that, physical austerities. Rather than that, he wanted his disciples to put their energy into work. Because work, obviously, according to Swami Vivekananda, can do the same thing that tapasya does, but it also has beneficial fruits for oneself and for society. And so why not use work as a tapasya rather than just working on your forbearance of the physical elements? Why not use the work itself to develop the power of forbearance, to develop the power of concentration of mind, to develop the power of patience, to develop the power of focusing? And so Sri Ramakrishna gives this very valuable advice. This, meaning work that we have to do, our duties, this is a kind of discipline. But one must finish it speedily. Yes, that means that that's not the goal for which we're here. So the purpose of life is not just to go on working. We have a certain amount of work to do, so let's do it. But let's do it so that it is yoga, so that it helps us rather than it harms us. But one must finish it speedily, because that's not the purpose for our being here. That's a thing that has to be done in order to get further along. So do it, but get to where you're supposed to go, not get caught in the process itself. So one must finish it speedily. While melting gold, so then he gives the example of the goldsmith who uses the bellows and he blows and he uses the pipe. If you've seen that with old-timey goldsmiths or blacksmiths and so forth, you still see it in India, using a metal tube and blowing into the embers to get them red hot, as hot as possible, in order to bring the temperature up to melt the gold. And so the goldsmith uses all the means at his hand. There's a fan that he keeps, there's the bellows that he keeps for pumping air, there's the blow tube that he keeps, all of this in order to raise the temperature. And while he's doing it, he's extremely busy, because he has to get the temperature up and he has to do it within time in order to melt the gold and get the gold molded into the shape that he wants. And so his face is sweating with the effort, huffing and puffing. But once the gold is melted, then he can sit back and relax. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, ask his assistant or his apprentice to bring him a smoke as he relaxes. And so also we have to do the work that is given to us in life to do. That which is our natural duty, that which comes to us to do as a duty, that we have to do. If we try to avoid it, we become lesser people. There are things that we take on that we don't need to take on as duty, so that we always have to be discriminating Is this something I need to do, or is it something that will benefit me that I don't need to do, but by doing it I'll become a better person? Or am I just taking up things to keep busy because I don't know how to occupy my time? And so I'm one of those people who has to stay busy all the time just because I want to stay busy. No, the things that we have to do, if we don't do them, that is our legitimate duties, our responsibilities in life. If we don't do them, then we become lesser people. We become irresponsible, and we suffer as a result. So let us do the things we have to do it as discipline, as karma yoga, but then get through it so that on the other side we can relax. That is, relaxing here means relax into the divine. If we do japa, if we do meditation, then let us work hard at that. That also is part of our duty, part of the work that we have to do in order to go forward in the spiritual life. So let us do it assiduously. But we do it not because working hard at spiritual practice is the end and aim of life, but because by doing that a time comes where that becomes natural, and then we can relax. Then we're free. I've seen some old swamis who had done that, who had worked very hard in their spiritual life, both in their external work in the order, and then their internal work with the meditation and japa and everything. And in old age, they led very blissful lives where they were free. So that's what we aspire to. And devotees also I have seen do that. So that's what we want to attain to. He continues, one must have stern determination. Then alone is spiritual practice possible. One must make a firm resolve. That is, a resolve here means a firm sankalpa. Sankalpa means an intention. That one must have stern determination. Then alone is spiritual progress possible. One must make a firm resolve that I am going to do what I can to progress spiritually. Let me meditate regularly. Let me do japa regularly. Let me do some spiritual reading regularly. And depending on the circumstances of my life, let me do what I can do, and then do the other things I have to do in life. But let me try to do that also as karma yoga. By working honestly, by working concentratedly, by working without distraction, by trying to do my work well and be a good person in the midst of doing the work, then my work will serve my spiritual life also. But let me take a firm resolve that without effort, without doing something, I'm never going to progress. And where I am right now in life is not enough. Let me move forward in my spiritual life. So let me try. The fruits I can't predict, and the fruits I can't control. All I can do is to put in the effort. And the fruits, they will come when God brings them. But let me do the footwork. And the results, I'll leave that to God. There is great power in the seed of God's name. Great power in the seed of God's name. It destroys ignorance. A seed is tender and the sprout soft. Still it pierces the hard ground. The ground breaks and makes way for the sprout. So here, of course, the seed of God's name, the mantra he's speaking about. Particularly the bija mantra, which is the seed within the seed. The mantra is the seed which contains God's name, and the bija is the seed of the seed. And so the whole mantra we're to repeat, but embedded within the bija is the central power of the mantra. And so there's great power in the seed of God's name. It destroys ignorance. Yes, through repetition of the mantra. Eventually we begin to see that it's destroying ignorance. The mantra practice is a strange thing, as is prayer and other disciplines as well. But with mantra, it's a strange, speaking of the mantra, it is a strange thing because for a long time it seems like we're not getting anywhere. We're just repeating it, and the practice most of the time seems to be mechanical. Sometimes we get behind it more consciously and with more intention and so forth, but then it lapses into just mechanical repetition. But that's okay. Not that that's where we want to stay. Try to be focused, try to do it with attention, but for a long time it's going to keep lapsing into just mechanical practice. And so don't let that dissuade you. That also is doing something. That also is doing something. It's wearing away the impurities of the mind, it's wearing away ignorance. But that work we don't see. We feel like we're still the same person and I'm just doing this mechanical practice, and after a while we begin to wonder, why should I do it? No, keep doing it because it's doing you good. One day you'll wake up and see, my goodness, now I've come a long ways and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know how far I had come. So that's because there is great power and it in the name, and it destroys ignorance, as Sri Ramakrishna here says. Holy Mother used to say, Japat Siddhi. The only Sanskrit phrase I know of that she used to say often, Japat Siddhi. From japa comes perfection. From japa, perfection. That is, just from doing japa, perfection can be attained. Of course, the repeating eventually has to become awakened, and it becomes alive, and then it takes us gradually to the ultimate summum bonum of life. But that happens because for a long time we went on repeating it even when it seemed to be doing nothing. It was doing something. It's just that we couldn't see the underground work it was doing. And so he gives the example of the seed, because of the seed of God's name. That an actual seed, the seed of a plant, is put under the soil. And the insides of a seed, if you break it open, you don't see a plant. You don't see the possibility for a plant or a tree coming out of the seed. But underground, the seed sprouts, and then even in hard ground, this soft sprout of the seed has a way of growing and breaking open the soil. So you can understand it in soft, friable garden soil that you've worked and you keep soft and everything. Then, of course, it's easy to see how a sprout can come up through it. But out in the yard where you haven't worked the soil, where the soil is compacted and everything, there also you see a sprout coming up. The hard clay cracking open and the sprout coming out. So the miraculous power of the seed, an actual plant seed, and its ability, this soft sprout, which you can break easily, crush with your finger, with the two fingers, and yet it has the power to break through the soil and come up and produce a plant. And so the seed of God's name is like that. You go on repeating it, and it seems like just such a simple thing. How could that do anything? How could it do anything? And yet there's tremendous power, like the seed which breaks through the soil. So this breaks through the soil of ignorance and produces the spiritual plant. The mind becomes very much distracted if one lives long in the midst of woman and gold, kamini kanchana. Therefore, one must be very careful. But monks do not have much to fear. The real sannyasi lives away from woman and gold. Therefore, through the practice of spiritual discipline, he can always fix his mind on God. And here, of course, he's not speaking of, it's not enough just to become a sannyasi. He's speaking about a real sannyasi who lives the life of a sannyasi, has little to fear. True sannyasis, those who are able to devote their minds constantly to God, are like bees, which light only on flowers and sip their honey. Those who live in the world in the midst of woman and gold may direct their attention to God, but sometimes their minds dwell also on woman and gold. They are like common flies, which light on a piece of candy, then on a sore or on filth. Always keep your mind fixed on God. In the beginning, you must struggle a little. Later on, you will enjoy your pension. So here, Sri Ramakrishna is telling all of this to Adhar in order to get him to realize that what he needs to do is to learn to fix his mind on God. That learn to ignore the distractions of life. Learn to fix your mind on God, and through that, great good will come to you. And later on, though in the beginning you have to struggle to do it, later on you'll enjoy your pension. That is, later on, like the goldsmith who worked so hard to get the gold melted, then he can relax. Or in another story he sometimes tells, not here, but in other places he tells about the farmer who is digging an irrigation ditch from the canal to his field. And he started out in the early morning, started digging. His wife came out and told him it was time to take his bath, brought his gamcha and a bar of soap and everything, and he drove her away. She comes back later and tells him that now it's time to eat. Why do you always overdo everything? Come on and get your food. You can finish this later. But he goes on working until evening, when finally he connects the canal to his field, because he knows that without water, the plants he has planted are going to die. And so he doesn't allow anything to distract him until he can connect water to his field. So that's the same idea. Once he's connected the field to water, then he comes home and tells his wife, now bring me my towel, bring me my food, and prepare a smoke for me. Because now the work has been done. Now he can relax. And so that is Sri Ramakrishna's message to Adhar. So with that, we finish April 8th, 1883, and we come now to another day, a week later. That April 8th was a Sunday, and now we're Sunday, April 15th, 1883, 1 week later. So remember that M, who recorded the gospel, he was a teacher, and so he had teaching duties on a daily basis. But on Sundays, he was free. And others also, many devotees came on Sundays because they were free from their working duties and could come to Sri Ramakrishna. So many, there are other days also besides Sunday, but most of the days in the gospel were Sundays because that was the day off. So Sunday, April 15th, 1883. Surendra, a beloved lay disciple of the Master, had invited him to his house on the auspicious occasion of the Annapurna Puja. It was about 6 o'clock when Sri Ramakrishna arrived there with some of his devotees. The image of the Divine Mother had been installed in the worship hall. At her feet lay hibiscus flowers and bilwa leaves. From her neck hung a garland of flowers. Sri Ramakrishna entered the hall and bowed down before the image. Then he went to the open courtyard where he sat on a carpet surrounded by his devotees and disciples. A few bolsters lay on the carpet, which was covered with a white linen sheet. He was asked to lean against one of these bolsters, but he pushed it aside. So, going back to the top of the paragraph, Surendra, one of his devotees, this was Surendra Nath Mitra, whom Sri Ramakrishna often called Suresh Mitra, but his name was Surendranath Mitra, and he was the one who, after Sri Ramakrishna passed away, supported the young monks who paid for the Baranagore mutt so that they could have a place to live after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, and a place to worship the ashes of Sri Ramakrishna. And so Swami Saradanandaji says that Sri Ramakrishna used to say that in his life the Divine Mother had shown him that he would have 4 rasadhars, that is, 4 providers of his needs. So there were the different ones, but one of them was Surendranath Mitra. In fact, I think Swami Saradanandaji says that he was a half supplier of Sri Ramakrishna's needs, and the other half was Mrs. Oli Bull in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who took care of the needs of Swami Vivekananda. And so Swami Saradanandaji was very, very fond of Mrs. Oli Bull and had high praise for her, as Swamiji himself had high praise for Mrs. Oli Bull, Sarah Bull. And so Swami Saradanandaji says that she was a half provider of needs, and Surendranath Mitra was the other half, making the 4th supplier of needs. So again, it's the Annapurna puja, occasion of Annapurna Puja. He's gone to see the image, and to all of you who are from India or those who have been to India, the scene will be very familiar, where there's a white sheet spread out with some bolsters for people to lean against. That was one of the surprises to me when I first went to India back in 1971, my first trip for just 28 days, in which I went to, because Swami Bhashyanandaji didn't go with us, the head of the Chicago Center where I had joined and who sent me to India, but he made arrangements for us in India. And so to go to people's houses and to see that there was no furniture in the house. There's maybe a carpet on the floor, a throw carpet, not wall-to-wall carpet, but a throw carpet, and a white sheet put over it, and some bolsters in the traditional houses. When I first went to Ridgely Manor back in 1997, I heard that a friend of mine from San Diego had moved to the same area just a few miles away. I was in the village of Stone Ridge, where the Vivekananda retreat was being established, and he was in the village of Saugatuck. And he didn't know I had moved there, and I didn't know he had moved there. We hadn't seen each other for several months. But somebody told me that there was somebody from San Diego who had moved into the area named Shamdas. So I said, is he white, Shamdas, a white American? And they said, yes, he's a white American, but named Shamdas. And so I thought, that must be the Shamdas I know. So I contacted him and went to his house, which overlooked the Hudson River, a beautiful, small brick house, but overlooking the Hudson River, a beautiful location, surrounded by forest. And so when I first went up to his house, I saw on the verandas around, it was an traditional American brick house. He hadn't built it. It obviously had been there for 50, 60, 70 years. But there was, like old-style American houses, there was a porch around part of it. And in the porch, I saw dhotis hanging from clotheslines. So that was my first sign that, yes, this has to be Shamdas, because he would always wear a dhoti. And so then Shamdas comes out and takes me into his house. In his house, there was no furniture at all, just white sheets spread over a carpet and tucked in under the carpet, and then white bolsters. And so it was, and then pictures of Krishna. He was a Vaishnava. Pictures of Sri Krishna and Radha and Vrindavan everywhere in the house. No other pictures. And so it was like walking into an Indian ashram. So this again is a very familiar sight. So Sri Ramakrishna goes in, he's asked to sit on the carpet, and he's provided with a bolster to lean upon. But he pushes it away. Master to the devotees, to lean against a bolster, you see, it is very difficult to give up vanity. You may discriminate, saying that the ego is nothing at all, but still it comes, nobody knows from where. A goat's legs jerk for a few moments, even after its head has been cut off. Or perhaps you are frightened in a dream. You shake off sleep and you are wide awake, but still your heart is palpitating. Egoism is exactly like that. You may drive it away, but still it appears from somewhere. Then you look sullen and say, "What? I have not been shown proper respect?" So yes, that was the remarkable thing about Sri Ramakrishna, that he had none of that. An incarnation of God, an extraordinary holy man, a great saint, but he had none of that sense that I should be shown proper respect. It was an amazing factor in his life. That when the manager, after I think it was after the passing away, it had to be after the passing away of Mathuranath, Bishwas, the manager of the temple got upset with Sridev for some reason, Ramakrishna's nephew, living also at the temple. And then he said, in frustration and anger, he said, well, Ramakrishna also may leave if he wants to. Who cares? Something like that. And so that was conveyed to Sri Ramakrishna, that the temple priest or the temple manager has said like this. So Sri Ramakrishna picked up his towel, his gamcha, put it on his shoulder, and walked away from the temple, was walking out the gate, ready to leave. No ceremony. It was reported to the manager, and he went running because he realized what he had done. And so he fell at Sri Ramakrishna's feet and begged him to come back. And so Sri Ramakrishna simply turned around, came back, put his gamcha down, and sat again in his room. And so many other occasions when he went to the Brahmo Samaj meeting to see Narendra. And when he went into the theater where the Brahma Samaj meeting was being held, and there was a lot of commotion when people saw him, everybody standing on their chairs to get a glimpse of the Paramahamsa who has come in. And so there was a pandemonium in the hall. So the organizers turned off the lights so that everybody would calm down. And Swami Narendra, the future of Vivekananda, was so upset with the bad treatment Sri Ramakrishna was shown by the Brahmo Samaj leaders that he came out and took Sri Ramakrishna outside and scolded him for having come when the Brahmo Samaj people were so rude to him. And Ramakrishna was just happy as a child that all he wanted was to see Narendra. And now saw Narendra, that's all he cared about. The rude behavior of the Brahmo Samaj leaders towards him and everything, that didn't faze him at all. And so that was an amazing thing. As he says, from some unknown place within us, this desire for respect and desire that people should treat us in the proper way, that comes out from somewhere. And yet for him, that didn't have. And so again, this is all to explain, he's explaining basically why he pushed away the bolster. Because the bolster is a way that you make yourself comfortable, and it's a sign of respect for a person coming to your house. Again, when in a traditional house where there was no furniture in India, or in Shamdas's house in New York, where there's no furniture, you provide a bolster, and so you lean back on the bolster, make yourself comfortable, and then you hold forth and so forth. But Sri Ramakrishna said, no. Should I lean against a bolster? No, because that is a sign that I am succumbing to the expectation of respect. So you see, it is very difficult to give up vanity. How difficult it is to give up vanity. You may discriminate, saying that the ego is nothing at all, but it comes out. Nobody knows from where it comes out. It comes out from somewhere. And so then he gives the examples of the Bali, when the goat is sacrificed, the head is cut off from the goat, and still for some seconds the feet go on kicking. Even more so with a chicken. When a chicken's head is chopped off, then the body of the chicken runs around for some time without the head on it. If you take a snake and cut off its head, both parts of the snake continue wiggling for some time. It eventually dies, but for some time both parts continue moving. And so he says the ego is like that. You can discriminate, you can try to kill it, you can try to slice through it, but from somewhere there's something still left, it still comes up. And Cater says, one should be lowlier than a straw and patient as a tree. That's a quotation from Shikshashtakam from Sri Chaitanya, his famous prayer, instruction in 8 verses. The beautiful English translation has been given: chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust raging furiously within. And then you come to the line where you pray where Sri Chaitanya prays that he may be humbler than a blade of grass, and patient and forbearing as a tree. So that Cater is quoting Master. As for me, I consider myself as a speck of the dust of the devotee's feet. So that is a famous expression used in the Vaishnava tradition, that I'm just a renu, I'm just the dust, speck of dust from the feet of the devotees. And sometimes people would say, I'm dust of the devotee's feet. I'm not even worthy to be the dust from the devotee's feet. I'm the dust that clings to the dust of the devotee's feet. So the idea is that I am no one. There's no significance to this. Vaidyanath arrived. He was well, let me stop here, because Vaidyanath goes on for a way, and that will make a good point to begin next time with Vaidyanath, a friend of Surendranath Mitra, who came to see Sri Ramakrishna. And again, Sri Ramakrishna immediately recognizes that Vaidyanath is a person who has some good qualities, and so he behaves very affectionately with him. So we'll stop here and continue next time on this same day, April 15th, 1883, page 210 now, where Vaidyanath comes in. So let me give announcements, and then if there are any questions, I'll take those, and then we'll close. So for announcements, on Sunday, we will have the lecture. It will be the second part of the Drigdrishya Viveka. Not that the text, the small text, Drigdrishya Viveka, of just 46 verses, not that it has two parts, but I've divided it into the first 5 verses, which I took last time, which deal with the actual discrimination between the seer and the seen, and the rest of the text, which deals with other aspects of Vedanta. So I'll take up just a couple of those, the idea of Maya and the nature of the Jiva. Those I will take up, 2 important topics in the text, and deal with those. So this will be one in the series on small Vedantic texts, Drigdrishya Viveka. Then on Tuesday, we'll continue with the Bhagavad Gita class. I apologize, on this past Tuesday, day before yesterday, we had to cancel the Gita class. We started it, but there was a loud noise in the background. And so Surenji and I tried our best to get it working, but we couldn't. It was too disturbing. We couldn't ask people to listen to that, and so we just canceled the class after we had tried to start it. Even now, there's apparently a little bit of white noise in the background, but at least it's not, it doesn't make it incapable of being understood, the class. And so we will continue the Gita next week and start off where we left a couple of weeks before. That is, this week we didn't really have the class, so we'll start where we would have started day before yesterday. So, and then the next Thursday we'll continue with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class. So no changes at present. We'll continue in this way. I don't foresee any changes in the schedule between now and the end of July. And then, as usual, in August we will take a month's break. But from now until the end of July, we will continue with live streaming only, and no assembly here, just live streaming. Then a break for August, and then September, when we start again, we will reassess the situation. Right now, it looks as hard to imagine that we will be able to start having full again in September, because cases in Texas continue to rise. It's not a second wave, it's the first wave, which keeps getting bigger and bigger in Texas. And so, but anyway, and in September, we'll reassess the situation and decide what to do then. So, any question or comment? Yes. Thank you, Surenji. Kamala. Pranam. Oh no, this is from Subhash. Pranams Maharaj. When should one stop working, that is, retire? Does this apply also to karma yoga? Should one stop that too after a while, and when? It's a very good question. Very good question. So the answer to that is we don't need to stop karma yoga, because karma yoga pertains to any kind of action. So if we are working and we retire from work, we still do something. And so we're spending more time in spiritual practice, perhaps, reading spiritual books, going to spiritual meetings, and maybe doing some volunteer work, some service work, seva. All of that also should be done from the spirit of karma yoga. That is, when you do japa, instead of thinking, oh my God, I've been doing japa for so long, I don't feel any results yet. When are the results coming? When are the results coming? No. Mine is the right to the work, meaning here to do the japa, not to the results. The results will come when the results come, but that's not something that's dependent on me. Mine is the right to the work. So in that sense, karma yoga continues forever, because karma yoga, well, forever means until liberation, because karma yoga pertains to the way we do anything, including spiritual practice. But now coming to the rest of the question, when should one retire? That's a very good question, and something that in this country and in India also nowadays, it didn't used to be. It used to be in India in traditional times, and here also it used to be that you retired when you couldn't work anymore or when you didn't need to work anymore. Now there are formal cutoff times for retiring that some people have to abide. Some workplaces insist that you are going to retire when you are this age, and you can't work beyond that. There are other places where you can continue working if you want. And so, how long should one work? Well, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, don't take the scab off of a wound prematurely. Leave the scab on until the wound has healed. And so keep working as long as you feel that you need to. First of all, of course, there's the financial consideration. You work as long as you need for financial reasons, and then work as long as you feel that you need to in order to keep the mind healthy. But when you can retire, when you begin to find that I have the capacity to spend more time in good activity, that is, in meditation, in prayer, in worship, in reading, in attending spiritual meetings, and in service work, then gradually reduce your work as you can spend time usefully. So the danger in retirement is you're working full speed, and then the day comes of retirement, they give you the gold watch, the proverbial gold watch, and then you have nothing to do. And you're sitting there, now what do I do with myself? So it's better to reduce your activity slowly as you can use your time fruitfully, rather than just having a sudden cutoff time and then we're not able to utilize the time. So if possible, if we have an absolute cutoff time with work, the profession we have, and we have to cut off, we can't just reduce our hours, then go ahead and do that. But then find some volunteer work, some service work, formal or informal, that you can do to occupy yourself, and then gradually increase the amount of time you spend in spiritual pursuits. So that is the best I can do for right now in a short period of time. But it's a very good question, and one that all of us have to face at some point if we live long enough to retire, as we hope to do. So with that, let me give a closing prayer. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anandarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidiyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha.